Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cougar Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with Ryan Rue as always, and we're going to talk about some recruiting when it comes to WSU football today because the 2022 recruiting kind of period has officially opened, I believe. I was made aware of this when I saw a Nick Rolovich video where he was channeling his Liam Neeson from Taken, pretending to talk to a recruit, saying that if you want to be in Pullman, he has this particular set of skills and he will find you. And I thought that was a great take on that. And it's Nick Rolovich.
He did like a Godfather thing, right? Wasn't that what he did?
Something like that. He's a very funny guy, and I'm looking forward to more of that. But that got me thinking about what exactly he should be doing in this recruiting cycle. And obviously we're not going to dive into specific players, at least I'm not. I don't think you have any seniors in high school right now that well, I guess they would be senior or whatever that we really want to I guess they'll actually be juniors right now. They'll be seniors next year. But that I really want to see on this team. But I do think I know I have a few ideas for what I want to see WCU do, but I'll let you kick it off and just kind of talk about what they need to do.
Across those three players that I see on the class of 22 here, we have a interior offensive lineman, linebacker, and a quarterback. Offensive line, obviously, just keep shoring up one of the best offensive lines in the Pac-12 and just keep that veteran status going over into multiple seasons. And then linebacker, obviously, pretty much every position on defense can have some depth to it and have some star power to it. So that's going to be kind of a long-term project. And then quarterback, where you're gonna have a quarterback or two every single offseason to keep things going. But if there's anything I want to see them kind of take a direction towards, it's obviously defense, and if anything, it's secondary. I feel like that's pretty obvious for WSU to try to rebuild that secondary. And I'm not too up to date on kind of the corner situation for this year's senior class in high school, but whatever they can do to get corners to WSU to try to shore up that secondary to make sure we don't give up 35 points in the first half to USC. And I know we're not going to attract a lot of the 4 or 5-star corners across the nation. But I feel like Nick Rolovich, knows what he's doing in terms of getting some diamonds in the rough and whatnot. But that secondary needs to be shored up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and that it's just the reality of where WSU is as a program and everything is that just one of the things that I kind of have, and it's not necessarily for the coaching staff necessarily. It's more for maybe the fans. It's like don't pay attention to the stars or the ratings or whatever. They're going to get probably mainly 3 stars and maybe some 2 stars thrown in there, but I don't really care about that. Like WSU is not going to be recruiting for stars. They're recruiting for fit. They're recruiting for just, guys who can work in the program. So that's what's most important. But my big thing that's not necessarily position centric is just to start recruiting in state more. That was a huge knock on Mike Leach. It's just that they were never really signing guys in state, and there's a lot of talent, especially on the west side, that wasn't even getting looked at by the previous regime. And obviously, I don't think they're going to be competing for the 4 stars and the 5 stars and the guys that are getting national recognition. But if they can just start making a recruiting presence known within the state, I think would be huge. They're already starting to do that. They've grabbed a couple players from Washington in this recruiting class, I believe. There's 2 and then a transfer. But even if you're not signing all these guys, just recruiting them and letting them know it's an option and not feeling like one of the 2 Division I football teams in the state won't even look at you. And hopefully that can lead to maybe getting some of these bigger guys who want to stay home, so to speak, and stay in the state. But other than that, which I think will just be my biggest thing, is I want to see them just involved in these in-state guys, is I think wide receiver and offensive line are, I think, underrated areas of need because they're the biggest strengths on this team right now. But we are in an kind of this year is going to be big on strengths, like that, because of the kind of compounding guys from last year returning. And so wide receiver is obviously a huge strength. Offensive line is an incredible strength, but they're going to be losing a lot. So young guys are going to have to step up. And obviously there are a lot of young guys at those positions. There's a bunch of young guys at every position. But, I mean, guys can come in and compete right away. And I think linebacker is another thing for that. Their linebacking room right now is stacked. They have more guys than I think they know will be able to play. But they're in the same position as I think they'll lose 3 to 4, if not more, including transfers after this year. And so don't get complacent with the positions that are strong right now, because they may not be in the future. So those are what I'm looking for. Obviously obviously signing guys to compete at, secondary and defensive line and kind of the weaker positions, I'm sure are the top need. But I want them to not overlook those other positions that are strengths right now, which I don't believe they'll do, because I'm sure if I can figure that out, then they have definitely gotten a hold of that already.
In terms of looking at the kind of veteran positions, I also want to go on top of that and say they should kind of look at running back as well, considering that Max Borghi and McIntosh are likely out this next year. And other than Katzer in the backfield, not a ton of recognizable faces in that running back room. But not saying that one can't emerge or Katzer won't emerge, the next year or whatnot. But getting a running back shirt up as well to make sure that there's we're still a good running back team, even though we're not Oregon, we're not Utah or Colorado or anything like that. But shoring up positions, like you said, is a huge thing. Back to what you said about recruiting in Washington, I think is huge, considering Western Washington's strength in just high school sports as a whole. I know basketball is one of the biggest hot spots in the country for, in Western Washington. And the number one, or one of the top quarterback prospects going into this next year signed with UW, and he was out of, I believe it was Sammamish, or it was
Seattle. Sure. I think he went
somewhere in the Seattle area. Yeah,
went to Kennedy, I think. So yeah,
right. So I mean, if that doesn't show enough, I mean, I believe Andre Dillard came from, or not Andre Dillard came from Woodinville, I believe.
Yeah,
and is Abe Lucas from Washington as well?
Yeah.
So those are 3 people right there that have come from the west side of Washington that can all play. And Andre Dillard was, I believe, really low recruit going into WSU.
He's like a 2-star or something.
And same thing with Abe Lucas, I believe, too. And they both developed very nicely at WSU. So take a look at offensive linemen in Washington. See what's going on in the state here, because although it's great to recruit in Arizona and Texas that I see recently, it's like, sure, but they're going to probably pick Texas U, or they're probably going to pick Texas Tech over WSU. They're going to want to play in the Big 12 or the SEC, or it's just an area that WSU doesn't have a huge outreach over. The same thing with like California. I know we get a lot of California guys, and California,
I mean, there's a ton of
huge
guys from California,
right. And although it's one of the best states in football, right there alongside with Texas, it's just we can't compete alongside these bigger schools, and we got to take advantage of the other side of the state that's just a couple hundred miles away, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting big players from that side of the state, I think, would be huge for WSU, and not only just be huge for them on the field, but just in terms of being Washington's university of choice. I think if they're going to try to progress into that stage, because I'm sure all the top athletes in Washington want to play for UW,
especially if they're from around there.
Exactly. So making sure that we can remain relevant within the state and maybe get an Apple Cup win as well could push us up in there. But I think recruiting in the state would be another great outlet for WSU to explore.
Yeah, and I've talked about before how I think WSU they've really been great at just developing, and because they're grabbing, they're going to Texas and getting the overlooked guys because there's 4 stars, all over there. Same with California, and even hopefully now to some extent Washington. So it's really going to come down to developing these guys, because very little of the guys that they sign are going to be able to come in and play right away. It's just the nature of how they do their recruiting. But if there are guys that are going to do that, we may have seen some of them already in the spring game with some early enrollees. But the class of 21, which will be Nick Rolovich's first full class, although he didn't get to do visits. They didn't really get to do visits. So it's kind of still, half of a recruiting cycle. I think this 2022 will be his first real full one. But we're finally going to get to see what a full Nick Rolovich recruiting class looks like. And I want to know which guy you're most excited for, primarily, let's go with right away. I know there's a lot of guys that are going to be making plays a few years from now, but which guy from this 2021 class, the incoming freshman, has a chance to make an impact right away?
I take a look at from the 2021 class. For someone who can have an impact right away, I look at Deshaun Stribling, considering wide receiver is kind of, Travell and Renard are easily the top
outside wide receiver.
Outside wide receiver?
Yeah, I believe he's an outside. He's up like that. So that's a position that's up for grabs. Obviously, the slot is locked down, but I believe he's playing outside.
Okay. Considering the Cougars' outside receiving area is taking a huge dip in the post, Desmond Patman, Calvin Jackson, or not Calvin Jackson Jr. What was
Aesop Winston,
and Jameer Calvin, shoring up that outside receiver spot is going to be huge going forward in the post air raid era. So I'm excited to see him play, considering in the spring game, I believe he had at least a couple of catches.
I think he had, he had 2 or something like that. Made a good play
in a spring game that was exceptionally defensively focused. I'm excited to see if he does touch the field, considering wide receiver we're kind of on our last legs in terms of veteran receivers on the team. So having these bright people, these bright talents come up, they're going to have kind of a lot of eyes on them, not only on the field, but during practice as well, from these coaches to see who's going to be the next guy up. Although I really like Joey Hobart coming up. We can talk about him a little bit later, but I at least want to see what Stribling can do, maybe on some third or fourth down plays. He's probably not going to be in the top 3 rotation or whatnot, but if he gets thrown in there once or twice a game, see what he can do, see if he can be the receiver of the future. But that's the biggest one that sticks out to me.
Yeah, being an early enrollee like he is, he's already getting to know the team, getting in there, and hopefully getting some reps with whoever the starting quarterback ends up being. I am going to start it off with an honorable mention of Orion Peters, who I talked about months ago. I think he is, Travell Harris light, and he's going to fill that role in the future of just the guy who makes everybody miss. And, like we talked about, there's just a backlog at slot receiver. So probably won't make an impact right away. I'd, be interested to see if maybe he gets, special teams duties or something like that. Maybe they don't want to use Travell. And that I know he has said before that he loves to return kicks, but they kind of went away from him at the end. So maybe we see him there. But I am going to go with Nick Haberer, who, if you recognize the name, you probably don't, but he's a punter, and I am a huge punter fan. I am one of the only people that doesn't groan when I see the punter come out on the field, although it sucks because I think you can. I recognize the importance of it to a football team and a football game, and I think you can. Really make an impact by flipping field position. But in terms of these guys that have an opportunity to compete just straight up, I would be surprised if he's not the starter. Let me check. I don't know if I believe there might be another punter on the roster, but let me just check that. I think he's like a punter / kicker. So it's really wide open. And this is a dude who's coming from Australia, which has just started becoming the whole, it's becoming just punter U of just making these guys producing these guys every single year. Okay, it looks like he's the only strictly punter on the roster. There's a kicker / punter that I believe is there last year. So this is a guy who should come in and start right away. And I am excited to see him play. I am excited to see a punter play. I mean, I am a captain of the special teams fan club. I was a huge Blake Mazza guy, probably the biggest Blake Mazza fan outside of Mazza, actually outside of his family. And I love seeing what Dragicevic could do too. So I'm really excited to see WSU finally get in on the Aussie punting kind of track. I'm a huge Michael Dixon fan for the Seahawks. So I'd love to see the Aussie get out there and just boom some stuff, stick it inside the 20. And if he can do some of the stuff that these Aussies are learning to do with all these different kind of punts, I think that'll be huge because, as you know, in our time as WSU football fans, we have suffered through a lot of terrible punting. And when they signed Dragicevic, it was a sigh of relief that they were getting an actual punter on the roster because the year before they were rolling with Kyle Sweet, a receiver doing rugby stuff, the kicker, Eric Powell, or another guy who I guess was kind of a punter, but he would only punt if they were at like the 50-yard line. So we saw what could happen with an actual dedicated punter with Oscar Dragicevic, who is now in the NFL as an undrafted free agent, and Nick Haberer is the next guy to step in and start booming it.
Okay, my microphone's working now. Okay. No, I'm excited for the punter as well. I looked up his name real quick, Nick Haberer.
Haberer is probably something. I'm going with Haberer.
He's a big guy, 6'5", 200 pounds.
Yeah, the dude.
That's a big punter.
Yeah, he's gonna boom, and I'm excited.
I was looking up real fast to see. I can't quite remember. So we have a new special teams coordinator going into this next year. I'm trying to remember where the previous one went, and I had an idea, but I'm trying to remember what had happened to him. But that is the one knock that I have on being excited for the punter in terms of we don't have the same special teams coordinator now that we had with Dragicevic and Mazza. But it's still going to I think we can at least bring some personality to the punter position, and that seems to be kind of a trend as of late, thanks to Pat McAfee, of course.
I have the answer to the previous special teams coach, Michael Gabriel. He is now a special teams assistant with the New York Jets. So that's what he was.
Okay. I didn't want to say it because I wasn't entirely sure, and I was trying to look it up, but that's what I thought.
Yeah, so they got new blood in there, but they're also gonna have a new punter and a new kicker, so it's starting fresh all around.
Right. Okay. So it's not going to be maybe quite what we see going into this next year. We may not see the Dragicevic replacement that we're all hoping for, but right away. But it's going to be a new age of WC special teams that I think is just fun all around.
Yeah, if we can, the Aussies, man, they're just natural punters,
right? And even Aussie players that can. I see sometimes Aussie players will come into the NFL or college or whatnot and play running back with their rugby backgrounds, which I think is awesome as well. One other player that I think may not start day one, but is going to be a huge impact going forward for WSU is Jaden Hicks. I've been a Jaden Hicks fan for a while.
I thought you were gonna use this entire segment to talk about Jaden Hicks.
I wanted to, but I have more faith that Stribling might touch the field playing his position. I feel like Hicks might go out there in special teams, here and there, but I can't picture him starting day one. He could, of course, shock me and be the safety of the future, but I think he's going to be a great safety going forward. He could probably be a 4 or 5 year guy for WSU. For all I know, he could be redshirting this season, right? So.
Most likely, especially with the redshirt rules of being actually able to play in a few games.
Right. I think he's going to, in terms of what we were saying before of WSU won't get the 4 or 5 star recruits every offseason. He's kind of a prime example of 3-star recruits that I think could turn out to be bigger than what they were recruited out to be. But I'm not going to over-exaggerate the guy right now. but I will say that I'm excited for whenever he touches the field because I feel like he's going to shock a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of these guys we'll actually get to see. Obviously, they're coming in as true freshmen and may need some time to really figure it out. But regardless of that, we're going to see some of them. And but the guys who have now gotten their year, although it was a unique year to say the least, but they are now going to be sophomores, despite the fact that they're retaining all 4 years of their eligibility, but still listed as sophomores. The class of 2020, guys, this was obviously a Nick Rolovich like half class. Most of it was established by the time he got here, but he had to, solidify these guys, and some of them decommitted and chose to go other places. But he had to come in and secure all of these guys' commitments. And obviously, we've seen some of them already, be important for this team. Obviously, Jaden DeLaura as a starting quarterback last year. Shaw Smith-Wade was a guy who got in at some corner. And but there's going to be more of these guys. Obviously, we haven't got the position turnover of the seniors leaving, so that makes it a little difficult. But just the fact that these guys are all 1 year older and 1 year into the system is going to no doubt lead to some of them getting on the field and making an impact. So I want to know who your guy is that you think will emerge, will be maybe a bit of a surprise this year.
So I'll start with maybe just like the most solid pick I have, and that would be Joey Hobart.
Yeah,
I think he's going to get a lot.
He's been, he's been, hyped up, not more than he necessarily should be since the start of training camp last year. So that certainly is a guy that I think everybody's looking for.
Yeah, the guy doesn't wear gloves. He's already being the topic of a conversation in Pullman just for that small little detail. But he's the guy that I think is going to make probably the biggest leap from his freshman year. And I think he had a solid spring game as well. He's got a lot of support within the team for kind of like the character that he really is for playing without gloves. I think is just neat. I used to think it was kind of just like blown out of proportion, like, oh, he doesn't play with gloves. Who really cares? But at that wide receiver position, you're getting the balls thrown at you so damn fast. It's like,
he's tough. He's a tough kid. Everything I've heard from just everybody on the team.
And we saw him, have a post-game press conference following the spring game. So it's obvious that WSU isn't really tucking him away or anything like that. Yeah. If he's getting media time, chances are we're going to see him out on the field. I think he's probably going to have the biggest leap considering Travell and Renard, like I said, are kind of on the last season here, and he's going to be one of the main receivers for the future alongside hopefully Stribling and hopefully TCon Nunnally as well. I think Hobart is going to have a huge leap. I had a very hot take in the offseason last year saying that he was going to lead the team in receiving yards, I think is what it was. I don't know how many receiving yards he ended up with. He didn't lead the team, though. I can tell you that much. But I think he'll more than double his statistics from last year, considering he's actually going to touch the field more. And also, he's doing some kick return work as well, I believe. So get to see some Joey Hobart kick returns. Maybe he can take one to the house or have a couple of really good runs and just further show why he's here and why he can be the next receiver of the future for WSU.
Yeah, it looks like he had 3 catches for 31 yards.
So I think more than double is a safe bet.
Yeah, maybe even he'll quadruple that, but
I'm just gonna stick with double for right now. Yeah. I want to make sure I get something in the win column.
Yeah, he chipped in some other ways, playing some special teams, and obviously, getting to return kicks clearly shows the trust that the team and the coaching staff has in him. And I think he was just in a position where there were 2 guys that were better than him and were some of the best in the conference, and it just didn't work out. So, but certainly at some point he's going to start getting involved. I was going through it. I think there's a lot of guys that have a chance to do that, to emerge and just be valuable parts of the defense. Obviously, I think there's a lot of edge rushers that are going to have to step up just by necessity and have shown some flashes. But a guy, and then I've talked about both Hunter Escorcia and Tanner Moku before, being safeties that are, kind of blocking Jaden Hicks right now, and somebody has to start opposite Daniel Isom. I think it's, almost guaranteed to be one of them. But I wouldn't be surprised if both end up making plays, just because I think they have very different skill sets. But I'm really excited for both of those. I think Tanner Moku's a guy who could be a box safety and be really impressive. But the guy that I think will emerge, and I don't know if many fans will end up even knowing his name because he plays defensive tackle, but that's Nathaniel James. I believe he had 2 sacks. I know he had at least a sack. I believe he had 2 in the spring game. And he is just a guy as a, as a sophomore, is going to have a lot of, expected. I'm trying to look through the roster. I had mix it up, but as a sophomore, he is going to have a bigger role. He plays on the defensive line, on the interior defensive line, which has been kind of a turnstile at points of just guys kind of going in and rotating and making plays, but nobody has really stuck. And I think he could be the guy that sticks. Obviously, incredibly talented to be doing this as just a sophomore. But, I don't know. Obviously, he's not going to be racking up double-digit sacks. He's not, Aaron Donald in there. So fans might not, unless you really pay attention, might not even be aware that this is a guy that's, a starter and is playing valuable snaps. But I think he's a guy who it seems like has already taken a big step forward and will only have more time to do so, and is at a huge position of need. And so I'm excited to see what he does, and I might just have to watch a little bit more closely to see what a guy like him is doing in there on the defensive line interior.
His name one more time. It was something James.
Nathaniel James. I don't know if he goes by. It's listed as Nathaniel. Obviously, we haven't really talked to him or seen press conference. Don't know if he goes by Nate, but I'm gonna stick with Nathaniel until I hear otherwise. But Nathaniel James in there, a defensive line.
Is he a walk-on by chance?
I don't know,
because I don't see him in the 2020 class on their recruiting page.
He looked like he was a 3-star. So
okay.
I assume he was. I'll go and check that out, but let's see. It could have been. I don't know.
Because if he was a walk-on, I'm even more excited to see if he has an improved season, to see if he can really come under the radar.
Yeah, no, that would be really impressive.
But I think it's fair to say that, with last year being the most unique season that these guys will ever play, it was basically just one big trial run with no years of eligibility lost or anything like that. It's going to be an interesting year going into this next year, considering that the USCs, the Oregons, the ASUs are all getting better. They're all still becoming the poster teams of the conference, and WSU is still kind of digging up from behind. There's one thing we can't say is that we're not University of Arizona, but we are. Yeah. We have a bright spot, but hopefully, what's his face, Gunnar Cruz can maybe be the next face of Arizona football. That'd be exciting. Yeah. But we'll just that's we got him first. That's what we'll say about that.
Yeah, I know you're still hoping to justify your Gunnar Cruz love.
I'm not giving
really
up. I'm not giving up my yet.
You might be one of the only people with Gunnar Cruz. Still holding on to Gunnar Cruz stock right now. But the one thing we know about this team is they are a young team, and that's perfectly fine for the position they're in. They're rebuilding as much as you can rebuild a college program. Obviously, you can't just trade everybody and tear it down and get a bunch of draft picks. But with a new head coach who's going into his first full year, and so there's a lot of room for these young guys. Obviously, there's a lot of good seniors too, so make sure that to learn from them and to figure stuff out. But this is a young team, so I'm excited to see these young guys and for them to get the opportunities that they wouldn't get at these other schools because we're we're looking at a few years down the road from here. So it's really exciting, and I'm excited to see all the guys that we mentioned, plus much more. But that's going to do it for us this week. We will be back with you the same time next week. Make sure to check us out along with all the other shows that Dash Sports has to offer. You can find those on our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, as well as our website, dashsports.tv. And make sure to follow us on socials at Dashboards TV on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Thank you for tuning in. And like I mentioned, 1 p.m. next week on Thursday, you can catch us again. And as always, go Cougs.